All right, hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Smith. In this video, I'm going to discuss related to Isshinryu karate. The doubters claim that kata doesn't help you become a better fighter, and I've seen even Jesse Encamp and Sensei Seth and others, supposedly fourth and fifth degree black belts, say that kata doesn't make you into a better fighter. I have to say, based on personal experience, that I disagree with that to some extent. I'm going to say that Sanchin kata by itself is not much use for a fight, with perhaps the exception of the double palm heel, which is actually a submission maneuver where you're grabbing a person by the collar and the groin and throwing them over your shoulder and then cross-heel stomp kicking them in the head. All right, that is a fighting maneuver. That's the only real fighting maneuver in Sanchin Kata. But Sanchin Kata is for breathing and muscle tension, not fighting. Seisan Kata is for fighting multiple attackers. All right. It teaches you how to fight and defeat multiple attackers. I'm not saying memorize the kata and fight by rote. All right. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about memorizing the concepts that the kata teaches. And it's much deeper than just memorizing the moves of the kata. All right. I'm not saying fight like a robot, like Daniel in Karate Kid 3 and somehow beat a dude that was a vastly superior fighter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about memorize the concepts of the kata, the bunkai. All right. By the time by the time my sensei really taught me the black belt level bunkai of Seisan, as well as Wansu kata, Kuzanku, and Chinto kata, and I went from not even being able to beat the second degree black belts sometime around before learning Wansu to starting to beat one of the second degree black belts by the time I got a couple versions of Wansu Kata's Bunkai down. And then by the time I got Kuzan2 and Chinto, I was beating all of the second degree black belts and beating Sensei's wife in sparring. And she was a third degree black belt and actually way the heck faster than me. Um, so by the time I got two or three versions each of Wansu, Chinto, and Kuzanku Bunkai memorized and just learned to apply it. And I was beating all of them one on one. And then since they started doing multi attack drills with me with the two second degree black, well, first he started with brown belts attacking me, but I beat them even handicapped. I beat them so effortlessly that he didn't put me against the two second degree black belts. Sometime, but where I got to about 3/4 to 90% of Sun Tzu kata memorized and was starting to learn the real bunkai a bit, I got to where I could actually win the handicap match against both second degree black belts attacking me. All right. And it is, in fact, largely due to Seisan kata and the bunkai of Seisan kata and the bunkai of each of those katas. When you get the bunkai and you get it where it becomes a muscle memory that you just absolutely in one motion block his punch and counter punch, block his punch and counter kick, and drag him into it. All right, this is where I messed up and almost hurt one of the second degree black belts because I drug him down into my kick as he stepped in, and I only kicked about 3/4 what I had. But I hit him so hard that it bruised his ribs for 2 solid weeks. He had a bruise the size of my foot in his rib cage, and he couldn't spar because he was hurt so bad for 2 solid weeks. If I had hit him 1 ounce harder, it would have crushed his rib cage. But this motion, it's in Seisan, just a simple middle block. All right, an outside. It's an outside middle block. You go from inside to outside. So that's an outside middle block, and then a grapple, and then a punch, or a grapple and then a kick, or a punch kick is the most devastating thing you can do in one or two simple steps to your opponent in a street fight or even in a prize fight. You can go to the face, you can go to the solar plexus. If it's a street fight, you can punch down into the top of the bladder. You can knee to the groin. You can kick to the groin. You can, if you're at arm's length and you catch their punch when they were stepping in, you can drag them into a thrust kick and kick through. All right. And let's discuss another thing. If you've seen the 1 minute bunkai videos where this dude, I think his name is Angel Lemish or something like that. I think he's a seventh degree black belt because he's wearing a red belt in some of his demos. And usually in Isshinryu and Shorinryu, you need to be a seventh degree black belt before you're allowed to wear a red belt. Well, anyway, he shows you several times some of the same things that my old senseis used to say. When you're doing both in a real fight and when you're actually drilling against an opponent that's the aggressor and you're practicing your bunkai, in drills, what we call kumite in Isshinryu. The attacker's punch at all times, both in a real fight and in kumite drills, needs to penetrate the target by 2 to 4 inches or so. All right. And a kick should penetrate by at least 2 to maybe even 6 inches when you hit your target. You're not kicking at the surface right here. You're kicking beyond the surface. Your punch or kick should penetrate the surface and do internal damage to the opponent's face or certainly their body when you hit them. All right. Which is why when I punch the punch machine, I punch through the punch machine, and I can damn near max out the first level, even 24 years out of practice, all right, without running at it, all right? Conor McGregor maxed the first level by running at it and throwing a hammer fist, all right? John Jones punched southpaw, and he only got 450 pounds, all right? I can just about max out the first level with a punch 24 years out of practice. All right. So there's no telling what I was actually punching when I was 20 years old in the prime of my life. Way more even than that. All right. So your punch penetrates through the target. Your kick penetrates through the target. Let me get my kick a little higher than that. Penetrates through the target. You get the point. All right. Now I'm 43 years old, and I did not warm up for kicking on this video or the other video. I can, in fact, still kick chin high when I want to. I'm just not going to do it without warming up because I'm not going to tear my groin muscle or fall on my ass on the ground without warming up. That would be a stupid thing to do for a 43-year-old. All right. Do you understand me? All right. But with a little bit of stretching and warm up, I can still get my kicks up to chin level with knockout power. All right. But anyway, when you punch or when you drill with an attacker attacking you, drill so that they can actually hit you. That way, if you screw up the technique, you get hit. That way, you know that you did the technique wrong. And go ahead and tell them to hit you if you do your technique wrong. Tell them to hit you twice if you do the technique wrong. That way, you know what real is. All right? Because if you only do your technique correctly when your opponent is half-ass throwing a punch, you're right. The kata or the bunkai or the kumite drill won't help you if you can't even do it right at half speed. You have got to drill it over and over again until you can do it at full speed and rip the guy's arm off with that windmill block. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or windmill block him straight into a wrist lock at full speed. All right, that was only a few frames. And I could go it much faster than that even if I wanted to. Because I'm watching this live in here, I can tell about how many frames it takes me to do a windmill block. All right. But a windmill block is to set up wrist locks or sidearm control or heel hooks. So, yes, this thing in Naihanchi Kata is definitely a submission. This is actually a placeholder for a heel hook of an incoming kick is one interpretation of the bunkai. All right. Is what this reinforced back fist so-called is. All right. It's a placeholder in the kata for a heel hook. It's also a placeholder in the kata for what does it even look like? It looks an awful lot like the figure 4 of a rear naked choke or sleeper hold, doesn't it? Okay, so it's a placeholder for multiple bunkais. So you could, in fact, have a person in part of the rear naked choke already on and back fist another opponent and then go ahead and apply this and back up while dragging them backwards. Understand? And shout down in their freaking ear, down, down, idiot. You know what I'm saying? Because yelling at people like a kia does work. So if you have multiple attackers, you get one of them in a hold, you back fist that guy, you back up, finish the lock here, and choke him out over the next 10 seconds as you back away from your other attacker. Then when he's out, go ahead and throw him down and either run away or beat the other guy. All right. So, what else have I discussed in here? Oh, yeah. This is supposed to be about drills don't work. They do work. You just haven't done them correctly. Kata doesn't work. It does work. All right. If you did Wansu kata techniques in MMA, you would kill one another. You would like the guy said on the forum. He was right. Most of the techniques taught in Wansu kata, if you actually practiced them full speed and used them full speed in an MMA match, you would kill your opponent. There would be a 90% hospitalization rate in MMA if we did Wansu Kata techniques in an MMA match. You would break the other guy's neck. You'd rip the other guy's jaw off. Understand? It does work. We know from real street self-defense scenarios that have actually happened over the years that it works. The kata works. So don't tell me it doesn't work. If you think it doesn't work, you've never tried it. And you've certainly never had it demonstrated against you. Now, I'm not saying to rigidly follow the kata every time you're in a fight. If you think that, then I agree. That does not work. I'm not saying fight like a freaking robot. Fighting is like, probably 50% science and 50% art and experience. If you've got to learn to adapt it to whatever the situation is. All right. So yes, there is 50% science and 50% art and experience to fighting. That's just the way everything really is. There's 50% science and 50% art and experience to forecasting hurricanes. All right. If you got a junior meteorologist that just got a degree, they can't forecast hurricanes as well as I can, and I don't have a degree. Because that's one of my favorite things to do is to sit there and see if I can beat the expert at it. And I beat the expert. I don't beat them as often as I used to because now they have better computer models. But a long time ago, I used to beat the experts more often than not simply because I watched the damn thing more than they did. All right? But that's what I'm talking about. You need 50% fight science. Is your fight science foundation good? And then you got 50% art and experience. And the only way you get art and experience is not by point sparring. This is why I cannot stand point sparring in martial arts. And can't stand that they call the world champion now, even in my own style, by point sparring. All right? If you can't win a full contact sparring match against the next best person in your dojo, you suck compared to, say, a professional fighter or compared to someone like me. All right? Because I could win a 1 versus 2 handicap against the next best 2 people in my dojo combined, and they weren't turkey sandwiches. They were an ex-Marine and another second-degree black belt. All right. I think I've made my point. So by the time I got the real black belt level, I'm going to repeat this. By the time I got the real black belt level bunkai of Seisan Kata, Wansu, Chinto, Kuzanku, and some of Sun Tzu, and learned 2, 3, 4 versions of each of them, I started winning handicap matches against an ex-Marine and another second-degree black belt who was my same age, working together against me. And one time, since I even gave them both the screamer sticks, and I managed to disarm both of them and beat both of them into submission without even getting hit. I wish I was lying because nobody believes me anyway, but I'm not lying. That's the thing. So don't tell me kata doesn't work, because the biggest thing that made the difference was, in fact, the bunkai of all of those kata.